Hi, Chris.
Happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Why are the awkward moments the ones you want to catch?
Isn't that what we all connect to? I mean, in a way, it's a funny thing is I've been thinking about this lately that, yes, these are celebrities and it's interesting and different to see them being awkward, but I kind of want everyone to be awkward in pictures. I think maybe they're our icons, and so it's important to see them that way, but I don't know. It's funny in the intro you talk about how they let themselves be vulnerable for me. I kind of feel like it's not really voluntary. It's sort of they kind of stumble into it accidentally.
You called this book Uneasy, and we're talking a little bit about these awkward poses, these awkward photos. This is a radio show, even though we are being filmed, but this is a radio show. Can you give some kind of sense of the pictures that you take of these well-known people? Like describe a couple of the more awkward ones?
Sure. I think a lot of it is just about, I mean, in a very obvious physical way, it's about a body position that is disjointed, or even the framing of the pictures often kind of places people off. I don't know. A lot of it is in the editing, to be fair, because the pictures are really more about me than they are about them. It's about me projecting my awkwardness on them.
Is that so?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know. It's something I can't resist.
Right. I'm just looking at this picture of Joaquin Phoenix on the cover of your book right now. I mean, he's holding himself by the midsection, like kind of near we'll call it the belt area.
Yes.
And he's leaning over kind of strange, like he has appendicitis or something. It's awkward.
Yeah, but it's kind of the thing where sometimes I'll see someone do something and I'll say, oh, do that again. Just a little awkwardness or a little placement. Like when I photographed Leonard Cohen, he's so put together. You know, when I walked in there, he was like hunched over the stove, like frying some eggs. Hey, boys, come on in. Like the cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And as soon as we started taking pictures, he like straightened out. He had his jacket on. Very, Leonard Cohen. But there was at one point in the shoot, he had his hands sort of in a way that like kind of looked like fish fins, like dolphin fins or something. And I was just like, don't move. And I get the tripod over, place the frame exactly. Please, sir, don't move. And I got the shot. And I think that's often how it happens. And maybe with Joaquin, it was more like he kind of did something and I just had him like just lean a little more. And then we got the shot.
Why is that the photos? Why are those the photos that we relate to? When Leonard Cohen passed, sure, there were a lot of photos of him with the three-piece suit and the fedora. But the photo that I saw almost more than ever shared that people loved was a picture of him in a convenience store holding on to 2 bags of Cheezies, waiting to go home. Why are those more candid moments, those more vulnerable moments, the ones that we seem to enjoy?
I think that we, in our artists, but also just even public figures, we want to see ourselves reflected in them. And I think that, we all struggle. We all have our life struggles, but also day-to-day struggles. And we want to see that in them. We want to see the kind of, I don't know, like the awkwardness, the uneasiness in them, because they are our icons. I mean, all through history, you've always had, oftentimes it's religious, but even when there's not religion, you think of in communist countries, they have giant posters of Mao and Lenin and stuff. You need a face to connect to. And I think, I don't know, there's a way which we connect to those artists who are an amplified version of our pain. Think Kurt Cobain or Ian Curtis. These are the musicians who we love. We don't want to go there, but we're glad they went there for us.
Has anyone ever refused to do anything?
All the time.
Is
yes.
that so?
Yeah, of course. I mean, but then you just ask. I mean, and this is one of the things when I'm talking to young photographers, I tell them, like, yes, especially early on, people said no all the time.
Mm-hmm. Anything stick out?
Okay, I'll tell you a little funny story. One of my best known pictures is of Billy Bob Thornton.
I heard of him.
Okay, he's urinating on a photo backdrop. Okay,
right.
There's actually shots, ideas he said no to. He said yes to that.
Really?
He said no to sitting with a bowl of potatoes.
But he said yes to urinating on the sidewalk.
Yes.
You know who you should ask to do that? Tom Petty. What's the most surprising thing someone has agreed to do?
Well, that's a pretty good one. I mean, you mentioned McGovern in the bathing suit. That picture is so startling because you see that. He ran for president, very dignified man. And, why is he in a Speedo bathing suit? And the way that happened was, and this, I guess, frames really nicely how it happens. When you see a single photo, you're seeing it isolated from context. When I shot that, I'd gone to his Virginia Beach rental, his family rented a cottage. Mm-hmm. And he came up the beach, shook hands with me and my assistant, and that's how he was dressed. He looked amazing. You know, he's like in his like late 70s or something, and he went inside, shaved, showered, got all nicely dressed. We did the photo shoot. And I said to my assistant, I got to get him in that Speedo. And she's like, just ask. So I asked him, I said, you looked amazing. Would you wear it? He said, no.
Right.
I said, it'd be for my portfolio, not for the magazine we just shot for. He said, okay. So the implication was we were going to shoot him on the beach. By the way, just the context and the phrasing. But when he went to go change back into it, I hung the photo backdrop in the cottage and we shot strobe lit in the space. So then it's isolated from context, and then you get this startling image.
Before we turned on the microphones, you and I were talking a little bit about how it's nice to be home.
Yeah.
About how it's nice to be back in Toronto to see some family. There's a lot of shots of Canadians in this book. Leonard Cohen, Margaret Atwood, Jim Carrey, but also Cowboy Junkies, Mac DeMarco. Was it a conscious choice for you as a Canadian to include some Canadian content here?
In a way, it wasn't. I mean, well, to be fair, the first like 4 years of the book, I was still living in Toronto.
Right.
So a lot of the people I'm shooting were local. As a Canadian, of course, you know who's Canadian and who's not. It's like the Canadian radar. You're like, it's bred into you. But I think a lot of people wouldn't even know that a lot of these people are actually even Canadian. Like, I think a lot of Americans don't know that Mac DeMarco's Canadian or William Shatner or Jim Carrey. I think, we just know it. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember being like 12 years old before I knew Neil Young was Canadian.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's, Canadians are awesome. So of course they're in the book.
But I know you've said before that you kind of quoted Marshall McLuhan that being a Canadian photographing Americans gives you a unique perspective.
Yeah, that's the front row seat on the show. I mean, it's amazing. And, it's funny. If you look at who the best portrait photographers are in the American scene, they're either Canadian, British, German. It's not a surprise. We come in as outsiders, and I think as a journalist, you understand too, like, you need to feel like an outsider, even if it's sort of an artifice you create for yourself. I mean, I became an American citizen a couple of years ago because I have an American daughter, so I thought it would be just a smart thing to do. And it feels different. It feels weird. Like, when I photographed Obama, I went in there and, it's like, not my president. Like, there's a way in which it was very powerful. I photographed a lot of politicians, and I learned that it's a very intense environment to shoot with them, especially with the sitting president. We're in there. We had 3 setups. We did the first setup, just a straight-on face shot. Then I did a kind of classic 3/4. He's looking away. I said, sir, keep your head position, but look at the camera with your eyes. And he looked at me and said, I don't do that. And I snapped the frame. And that's the one in the book.
Wow. Well, how did he feel about that afterwards?
And we just moved on.
Seems smart.
Yeah, First Amendment and all that.
I understand. Before the Secret Service moved
exactly.
in. Some of the photos you've taken became iconic years later due to circumstances out of your control. I'm thinking in particular of a photo in your book of the late comedian Chris Farley. He's there. It's in black and white. I believe he's wearing some kind of crown. Is that right?
It's in color, but it's very monochromatic. Yeah. So he's wearing a crown and like a quote unquote wife beater T-shirt with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, standing by the window. One thing I learned early on, as I started to get more jobs, I tried to squeeze in just 10 minutes for a shot for me. That was like a 1.5 hour shoot.
Yeah.
Did all these crazy things the magazine wanted. And I just wanted to do something quiet for me. When I shot it, I kind of thought it was like kind of me putting too much of myself on him, too much of my sad, mysterious, esoteric, whatever.
Yeah.
And I didn't think much of it. And then after he died, and I read about his circumstances, and
it
how
was
his last months were.
weeks later that he died, right?
No, it was a couple of years.
Oh, a couple of years, okay.
But he had even at the time, they told us, he just came out of like a fat camp rehab thing or something. Don't make any jokes about weight, which I'm like, I'm not gonna make jokes about weight. But, so clearly he was just coming out of rehab, and he was obviously struggling through the whole time. Mm-hmm. And that was obvious, he did even bits on Saturday Night Live where he was like, going to rehab and then recovery. Like, it was crazy how much it echoed even some of his performances, I kind of saw in retrospect. But after he died, I kind of dug out the contact sheets and I found that frame, and I was just like, whoa, like I kind of unintentionally nailed it. But that kind of reinforced my thinking about really putting myself into the pictures. That Donald Trump picture too.
So I wanted to mention that about your photos that you take that years later have a different meaning. You took this photo of current U.S. President Donald Trump. It's a photo of him, and then mirrors. So you see all different angles of him going down the
right. It's kind
of
like a sliced mirror. So there's multiple reflections of his face.
Right.
And I took that 10 years ago, right? He was just like a kind of, amusing television personality at the time. But my instinct to kind of always go weird, always go dark with everyone is something I'd learned partially through the Chris Farley experience. And that if you go there, you're usually going to be shown to be correct. I mean, everyone has their dark sides, everyone has their struggles. And I'm not saying necessarily, I'm not projecting so much of that on Trump, but obviously he's a complicated figure who now as president takes on multiple layers of meaning. And, we're now dissecting him in a way that we never would have imagined we would even care about that with Trump.
What was your impression of him when you met him?
He's very cordial. I mean, he's an amazing salesman, and he sort of sells you when you meet him. It's funny. I'd seen Bill Gates go and meet with him and come out and talk about this will be a time of innovation, and people are like, "What is he saying? Has he lost his mind?" But Trump is amazing. He's not even that ingratiating. He's just relaxed and friendly and funny. I don't know. He's one of these rare people who's so different in person than he is on television or how he projects himself.
You look at the photos of Joaquin Phoenix and pictures of Chris Farley, of Obama, of Leonard Cohen, of George McGovern. There are so many photos of the people would just die, would love to photograph. Is there anyone left on your list? Is there anyone living who you wish you could photograph that you haven't?
Inevitably my list ends up being people who have just died. Like Carrie Fisher, I would have loved to have photographed. I was a Star Wars obsessed teenager, but also just since then, just seeing her as a personality, she was so, forthright, and in a way, she was kind of, I guess she was sort of a damaged person in a way, which I'm very drawn to. Frankly, I could have called my book Damaged, but Uneasy is a little more appealing. But yeah, Carrie Fisher would love to have, in a weird way, I think we all know her in a weird way because she's put herself out there so much. I love people who do that.
Chris Buck, it's been a pleasure to speak with you today.
Thanks for having me.
And welcome home.